Awesome. Okay, well, welcome, Zach. Welcome, John. I'm going to let you guys take it over from here and introduce yourselves and get rolling.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you, Jody. And good afternoon, supply chain geeks out there. Hope you all are having a really wonderful day. It's really a day to celebrate you, the partners, customers, and community who've really helped keep the supply chain moving with your dedication to efficiency, accuracy, connectivity, innovation, and continuous improvements. This afternoon, for our 2:30 p.m. session, we're joined by John Darlenzo, who is the CEO and president at DoForms. Welcome, John. For the past 3 decades, John has dedicated his life's work to building wireless data collection solutions for some of the world's largest corporations, including the Postal Service, Ford, Pepsi, Kraft, and is able to lay claim to building some of the first applications overall in our industry. A true hashtag supply chain geek himself, John is beyond excited to lead this afternoon's session discussing some contactless signature capture technology's impact as really a critical COVID-19 adaptation solution, but more importantly, provide a broader overview of the evolution and current state in the industry of automated workflows and mobile data collection. So ladies and gentlemen, supply chain geeks of all ages, please welcome DoForms' John Darlenzo.
Thank you, Zach. I have myself off mute now, so hopefully you guys can hear me. All righty. So I just want to say, I watched some of the last presentation. Geotab's a great company. We are actually integrated with Geotab. So if you want to add real-time dispatching and data collection into that product, you could actually put DoForms right in their menu. So we've become part of their marketplace. So great product there. Today, we're going to talk about wireless signature capture, or contactless signature capture, which is really something I didn't think about until, probably 2 months ago, when somebody called me up and said, we use your competition because there's a whole sort of forms industry that's coming about. And they said, we use your competition, but there's a problem. And I said, what's the problem? They said, well, once they collect the data with the mobile form, it just becomes a PDF after that. It goes into the system as data, and then it becomes a PDF to be emailed to somebody. And they were like, what they told us to do was to then go ahead and hire like DocuSign and add DocuSign to the PDF. And like, by the time we're done with that, the complexity and the cost and everything is ridiculous. Plus, it's kind of hard to if you ever got a DocuSign document, you got to find that particular place to sign within the PDF. And they said, what we really want to be able to do is to be able to continue to use the form. And that's really what's become, I think, the differentiator for DoForms in this industry, is that if you look at traditional mobile development, everybody focuses on, hey, I'm going to build a mobile application, right? And then the structure of that data only exists in the mobile application. And then somebody says, hey, I'll build a database to capture the data. And then somebody says, I'll build a wireless engine that lets you transmit the data back and put it into the database. And then somebody else says, well, I'll build a web service that can basically access that data. And somebody else goes, I'll build a web application to let you view that data on some back-end system. And before you're done, you've basically got 6 or 7 different technologies involved and 6 or 7 different technical disciplines involved just to capture the data, redisplay the data, access the data. And that makes building systems really complex. So what differentiates DoForms right out of the box from sort of everybody else, even our forms competition, is when you build a mobile form, you're really not building a mobile form. You're building a structure that can be presented or rendered on iOS or Android. It can be presented or rendered on a browser. And it effectively knows how to render itself correctly automatically whenever it's opened up on any one of those platforms. So you build a form once, and that form can be used by many different people throughout a workflow, all right? So what that means is that everybody in the workflow can continue to participate in the filling out or processing of that mobile application. Now, where that became critical in contactless signature is, hey, I want to have a form that somebody fills out. I'm a field tech. You know, during COVID, the last thing you wanted to do is have an emergency plumber come to your house and, you know, he hands you a device and says, here, sign this, right? Now you've either been infected by their device or you infected them back by touching their device. And that's where this demand kind of came out of. We got calls from the field service industry saying, we can't ask for a signature. We can't capture that kind of information by sharing our device. Plus you have to walk up to about a foot away from me to sign my device. So they said, what could you guys do? And we said, it's very easy. We can build a form and we can add a field into that form that asks for the email address of the person. You could type that email address in, hit a button, and that form will automatically be sent through email to that person. They'll get an email, they'll have a link in that email, they'll click on the link, and the form will render itself immediately on their device, regardless of whether they use their phone, a tablet, their desktop, a laptop. Now, what's more important is if you're gonna look at things like workflow, you have to have a couple of things that are just basics, otherwise workflow won't work, all right? So in order to do workflow correctly, the first thing you have to have is you can't make an assumption you know what technology the other person's gonna use to open it, right? Because then you would only limit yourself to say to the person, well, do you have a smartphone or do you have an Android phone or can you open this up on your browser? So you wanna have the ability for it to open up on whatever device that person wants to open it up. The next thing you have to have is you have to have the workflow engine that understands basically how to move that document from point A to point B, in this case, back to point A again. And then more important than that, you have to have specialized rules and permissions at an entity level. And what does that mean? So if you look at like DocuSign and somebody sends you a PDF with DocuSign, maybe you have a 3 or 4 page document and that signature may be embedded anywhere in that document. Right? And all they are is sort of just an appendage on top of it. With DoForms, we can actually build intelligence into the form by entity. So as an example, we could say the person that's getting this form emailed to them as an entity, we're going to place a button right at the beginning of the form that's only visible for that entity, that when you click on that button takes you immediately to the place you're supposed to sign, or in this case, maybe even pay by credit card. We can pop up specialized messages with instructions that only that entity would see that are eliminated from the form for any other entity. So if somebody else opens up that form, they're not going to see a click here to sign. That may not be appropriate for that person. So it's very important that if you're going to send somebody a form, you also have the ability to help them navigate through it very easily to be able to get to where they want to fill it out. So in this particular case, there's a big red button in the bin. It says click here to sign. They hit it. Takes you right to the signature spot. The other rules and permissions are, hey, I'm asking you to pay by credit card, so I'm going to make that a requirement. You can't send that form back to me unless you pay by credit card. And we have the ability to integrate credit card capture. But more importantly, wouldn't it be horrible if you send somebody an invoice with $300 on it and somebody was able to change it to $30, pay by credit card and send it back to you? Because whoever looks, right? The technician would probably finish the job and not even realize until accounting wanted to kill them that the person did that. So it's very important as you're putting these workflow systems together to do things like contactless signature, that you could say that field, the amount to be charged is read-only for that particular entity. So it wasn't read-only for the technician who did the estimate or built the invoice, but it was read-only for the person that you sent it. So with that said, you're basically able to build very complicated structures with workflow, but you're building all of that intelligence into the form. So unlike other systems where you kind of build something and then another thing picks it up and does something with it and another thing picks it up and does something with it, when you're building a DoForm, you're building that intelligence into your form. You're basically saying to the form, I want to put an email control in here. And when the form is submitted, I want you to forward this form to that email address. And I want you to control these fields in the form by virtue of this particular type of entity. So by the time you're done with the form, all you've built in the entire system is that one form, but yet multiple people are able to look at it. So as an example, you may have the technician filling out the invoice. They put an email address in, it gets forwarded to the customer signs it 10 feet away, pays by credit card 10 feet away. They have a button. There's a rule in DoForms that you could say return to sender. So as soon as they hit the return button, it goes right back to the technician. The technician may finish the job because they got paid for it. They hit the submit button, it goes up to the cloud, and the accounting department now can bring that form down onto their desktop, completely look at that information as a form, so it maintains the structure and the quality of a form, and they have maybe a page that nobody else has seen called, let's say for accounting use only, where they could put in accounting information or coding information on what T accounts it has to go to in their CRM package or something like that. So basically what's happening is we've kind of changed how applications are being developed. You know, the older days of, hey, somebody has to do an analysis, somebody has to put a specification together, we've got to get specification approval, we've got to modify the specification to modify the requirements changes that they had. We're going to go out and build it in 6 months. We're going to come back to you. You're going to test it. We're going to go through all kinds of iterations. Then we're going to put a deployment schedule in place. You know, that may work for some of the really large and crazy applications that are out there that have 8 million exceptions. But what we're finding in this world is a lot of things that people want to do don't have 8 million exceptions. And, you know, they're really relatively simple things to do, especially in, you know, supply chain. We've been starting to do a tremendous number of Windows conversions, Windows to Android. You know, obviously Windows is no longer supported, Windows Mobile. I've built Windows mobile applications for decades. Very hard to do. You know, a lot of things you had to take into account. You know, we had crappy wireless networks decades ago. You didn't always have coverage. You didn't get a lot of bandwidth. You know, free gigs and you know, unlimited bandwidth didn't exist 2 decades ago. Battery life was horrible on a lot of these devices. If you tried to transmit 20 times because you weren't in coverage, you'd also kill the battery on the device. So, you know, today with new Android operating systems, it's kind of easy to build features. So in the past, you know, if you basically said, hey, I want to take a picture, you had to call the specific API provided to you by that device, which would utilize the integrated camera. It only worked on that one device in the whole world. And if you wanted to support a camera on another device, you had to call their API, all right? So in the new world of Android and iOS, if I say to the operating system, hey, I want to take a picture, guess what happens? The camera pops up, all right? So now, instead of focusing on, I want to take a picture, how do I do that? I just drag in, I want to take a picture. And then we pop up, would you like to sketch on that picture? Would you like to document that picture with a GPS stamp and a timestamp? Everything I just said to you takes about 2 minutes to do. So as an example, today, the cars that leave Japan, leave the port of Japan, they're inspected by DoForms. Because instead of having a piece of paper with a wireframe of a car and somebody writing a D for dent or S for scratch, they basically take a picture of that door with a scratch in it. They use their finger to draw a big circle around the scratch. And we even created special icons that they can put on it that represent a scratch, a dent, or a paint chip. So they use that technology now to effectively inspect the cars as they leave and document damage. The funny thing is, Barcoding brought to us the actual people on the other side of the world in the United States and Newark, New Jersey, that have to take those cars off the ship and put them into one of those parking lots with 8 million cars in it that we all see once in a while if you pass on the turnpike. Well, we did a system for them as well that allows the person to scan the car's VIN, scan their employee ID, and then scan the parking spot that they put it into. And it time manages how long all of those individual transactions took to happen. So it's kind of interesting that we got both sides of the world on that one. If you look at workflow and contactless signature as part of workflow, and a lot of people, you know, probably today are talking about COVID, we've been able to use COVID to do some pretty interesting workflow solutions that really involve our ability to very easily put technology out into the industry. So we had a test center, a company that had, I think it was 15 test centers come to us, and they said, hey, maybe we could do something where they have a form. The big issue is how do we get that form to everybody? Maybe they could put their license plate number in it. And effectively when they get there, the person would have a device that could look up their license plate number. And I said, wait, with DoForms, we can make that a lot more sophisticated. We could really solve that problem. And then as we started to solve the problem, we realized that would also apply to retail stores and people that have to show up at work. So we started building a lot of different systems. But what we were able to do is build a form, because we have that form link capability, because anybody can open that form on any device. we built this customer a form that they embedded in their website. They sent the link out on social media. They could even have news channels say, hey, if you want to register online for this site, click on this link in our news page, right? So the distribution of that original form is very easy. They open that form up and they pick their test center, they pick their date, they put in 3 or 4 pieces of information, and then it goes back to our system and it retrieves data back to the form. And the data that it's retrieving is we set up hour slots for that particular location for a particular day. And I think we had 8 to 9, 9 to 10, all the way up to 4 to 5. And then every time somebody registered for one of those slots, it would increment that number by 1. So when we pulled that data back, we would know how many people registered for each time slot. And then we gave the company the ability to say how many slots or how many time slots they would give per hour. So it was a max number of tests per hour. So when the person opened up that form, the person who wanted to be tested, it looked back to see how many people registered for those time slots. And if a slot exceeded the number of visits per hour, a test per hour, it didn't give them the option to pick that time slot. So the first thing that did is it kind of brought up that sort of Disneyland approach where instead of waiting online for rides forever, you registered for a time window and then you were able to get right on the ride. So this did the same thing. Instead of having people all show up at 9 o'clock in the morning and then waiting in their cars running because it's 90 degrees now and nobody's allowed out of their cars, it gave us the ability, or it gave that company the ability to spread those visits out across the entire day. So then we said, what other technologies can we use DoForms for to help that? So we said very easily we could put an email back to that customer with a big QR code in it. And the customer would get this QR code and it says, you have registered for a test at this location, at this address. Please show up between this hour and this hour. And please have this on your phone or print it out, just the way you would use your boarding pass at an airport, right? So really we're applying the same technologies that we've seen and all had to work with for years. And now that person can show up at the test center with this QR code on their phone or their tablet or the printout. And then we go ahead and we have a third part of that, which is the tester now has a device that could scan that QR code, bring up that person's name, verify that they're supposed to be there at that place during that day and time, that time window, and then collect other information during that test. So all of that took probably, I'm going to say about an hour to build, all 3 portions of that technology. And that's what DoForms is able to do today. I like to call it sort of a really cool spec tool. And the thing that makes it really cool for building specifications is when you're done, you hit a button and your mobile application pops out. So usually when you're done with a spec, that's when all the work starts and the months and months of budgets that are required happen. With DoForms, you hit a button and your mobile application pops out. A lot of people don't know about DoForms or forms technology in general. There's still a sort of a consensus, especially in the supply chain world where, this is a very specialized thing. You have to work with people that have years and years of experience with barcodes and barcode scanners and all of these things, right? And, it's got to be expensive and it's got to be, something difficult to do and you got to have IT involved. And I can tell you we're doing some really powerful things in supply chain and we're not even doing the core. Like we did a major Pepsi distributor in the United States and we didn't replace their direct store delivery. I think they paid $1 million for that application. They've had it for 10 years. They've had every exception for every customer hard-coded into it. But they wound up buying 800 licenses of DoForms because everywhere else in their organization, everywhere else throughout their warehouses, their management came to the table and said, there's all these different ways we could use DoForms in our product, in our company, to basically make an advantage for our company. And they wound up taking that to Pepsi. They took it to Canada Dry. They took it throughout their organization. It grew to 800 licenses. We did a little thing for Five Below, where they said, we already have a warehouse management system. That's the problem with our industry when you're selling this hardware is that typically everybody that's in business already has bought a lot of the technology. So if you want to sell more of it, you got to find out what they're not doing today, right? And that's really what DoForms focuses on. Let's do what you're not doing today. So we said to Five Below, what are you not doing? And they said, well, we have all of these pallets that come in damaged and we push them off to the side. And then we have a worker go and they open them up and they try to take the broken product and throw it away and they take whatever's not broken and they put it in the store. And I said, there's probably a lot of cost to that. They said, yeah, it is. And I said, well, what if we got the company to refund you for that damage? And they said, that'd be great. How would you do that? And I said, give us about 20 minutes. And we went out and we built a mobile form for them that allowed them to scan the pallet ID, take a picture of the damage, circle the picture, GPS stamp it, time stamp it, and we asked them for a list of all of their vendors and the email address. And they picked the vendor, and we created an email template that was a request for refund, which documented by picture and GPS stamp and timestamp. And in the first month, they recovered $26,000 in damage returns. Within about 20 minutes, we got a call from them and said, we now have a team of people dedicated to where else can we use this technology to find benefit in our company. So the thing that I'm trying to sort of get across to everybody here is it's not what it used to be. Zach kind of announced that I've been in this for a long time, and I've built systems that were $50 million for 50,000 people doing pickup and delivery. I did 8 million pickup dispatches between 8 and 9 o'clock in the morning, and really big, complicated stuff. I've done in the 90s, every Chips Ahoy cookie. I did all of Nabisco's retail management systems for every store out there. So I have, that knowledge of what it took to build Windows apps and the early devices and, all that kind of stuff. And the funny thing is that Nabisco app, I think I could build today in about, 3.5 hours with DoForms. And it would probably be a lot better. A lot more robust than it was back then because of all the peripheral support we have today with GPS and pictures and video and, things of that nature.
It's funny, John, you're talking a lot about the new use cases that are coming up, every single day almost with the DoForms platform. And, I know we started today from hearing from Jody about, kind of in the technology fallacy book, the same thing happening with duct tape. So, are you still continuing to see new use cases for the technology moving forward, not just amidst COVID, but just every single day, people are saying kind of, what else can I do with this software?
Yeah. People ask me, what's your standard business model? I'm like, we don't have one. Even in the last month, you guys have brought 2 Metropolitan Transportation Authority deals to the table for us. We've done a lighting inventory app where we had to count every light bulb, and then that was going out the door. We did a solution for you where the company came in and said, hey, we want to scan a label. We want to give you a file. We want you to scan the label, check the file. If there's a price change, print the new label automatically. I think that was for like 12,000 stores. It took a little bit because we were missing the label piece. We added that specific feature they wanted in the label. I can build that solution now literally in 30 minutes. And, that's a pretty standard application. The funny thing is, I get a call one day from a guy who says, you got to add a field in a form for me. I said, why? He goes, we're fighting forest fires. We're in Virginia and we need to add a field right now. Can you do it? And it was like they were right in the middle of a forest fire and they were taking video and pictures and sending them back to central operations to know where to send the helicopters with the water tanks to drop on the fire. I got a call from a guy one day. He says, I need to be able to label a bag because I'm taking butterfly egg samples in the Everglades. I'm like, where'd you hear about DoForms? He goes, oh, my friend's a bird watcher. So it's like, we're getting into, I can't tell you I don't think there's an area we're not being used for something. They use DoForms to take the water temperature of the geyser in Yellowstone National Park. Water companies, the state of, city ofs that do water testing. I guess all these where they water treatment plants and stuff, they're constantly having to test for salinity and all these other things. They love DoForms. For some reason, we have tons of water treatment plants that use DoForms. Some of the largest companies in the world, Reckitt Benckiser uses it for quality assurance in the Lysol plants. In New Jersey, that's the largest aerosol manufacturing plant in the world. Jones Lang LaSalle right now is refurbishing every Walgreens in the country. They literally use DoForms to start at the curb and end at the back door. And they take hundreds of pictures. They document how many toilet bowls are in it, how many ceiling tiles. And then they use DoForms to manage contractors to go in and basically, replace all that, making the store relatively brand new. So, we're being used in proof of delivery. We've integrated tons of scanning capabilities now, support for barcode label printing. We're doing asset tracking where we're barcode labeling assets. And then every time we scan them, we can document, who had that asset last. We're doing inventory, field service, invoicing. So literally, we're a tool, but we're a tool that anybody can use.
Sure.
So like half of our customers are probably secretaries and the person's child who's like off from school during the summer and says to their parent, this is ridiculous. Why would you ever use paper? I'm going to find a way to fix that. And they find DoForms and they like automate their parents' company while they're off for the summer. It really is the type of technology where either we can build it for you or you could build it in your house yourself. Alcoa is currently converting 5,000 paper forms into DoForms.
So where would I get started? I mean, if I've got either manual entry, pen and paper in an area of my business, or say I do have a legacy Windows-based application that I wanted converted, I mean, where do you typically recommend people get started on this migration path to move their applications to DoForms?
So the great thing is, instead of spending 3 hours on a webinar trying to explain to somebody what DoForms is, we basically spend about 30 minutes to an hour on the phone with them or a webinar. We gather their specifications and their requirements, and then we get back on the phone with them or a webinar with them, a day later, and we literally show them the application. So it's a very interactive process. You guys have done it with us multiple times now, where you either get a paper form that somebody's using, or you get a set of requirements. We'll get on the phone with that person, or a webinar with that person. We'll gather some more information. We don't have to charge to do that first one. Our model is let us do it for you, because we believe that if we show you that we were able to do it for free in an hour, all of that fear and risk is going to immediately be off the plate. Nobody's going to be like, oh God, this is going to cost $1 million. They can't do it. They're like, hey, they just did it in an hour for free. And to be honest with you, we'd rather do it for free in an hour than spend 3 hours trying to convince you that we can do it. And that's, I think, another way where we've kind of changed how mobile applications work. You kind of bring a requirement to the table, we do it, we put it back in your hands. You ask for modifications, we make them, we put it back in your hands, you try it. We like to do what we call building the internal champion. So our goal is, when you guys deliver a device to somebody because they want to see it, typically with nothing on it, all they could do is go, look, this is a rugged device, watch, I could throw it across the room, right? We don't want that to be the case. When you deliver that first device for somebody to show them because they're thinking about buying a bunch of them, we want them to have their mobile application already on it, so that they can then go to their boss and go, look, we've already got the app, the device already runs it, it's working perfectly. And based on that, they're not asking, is there enough CPU, is there enough memory? Because it's already working. They already went out into the warehouse and did a bunch of transactions, and it worked fine for them. So our goal with you guys has been to say, hey, you bring a customer to the table, we'll build a form for them for free, or the app for them for free, we'll get it in their hands, and we want your sales cycle to be like less than a week. We want that customer saying, you got the device, I got the software working on it already, there's no reason we don't move forward.
Yeah, it's really some incredible, it's an incredible technology. And, you've made some very powerful assertions sort of around the speed with which the DoForms platform can develop applications. I mean, how quickly do you think you guys could really develop an application or migrate an application? I mean, assume it's not one with, those 8,000 or 9,000 exceptions. I mean, if we challenge you to build an application in a day or a day and a half, I mean, is that something that DoForms is comfortable with? Would you take on that challenge, John?
Absolutely. In fact, if there's anybody on this call that wants to call you guys up and give you a set of specifications, challenge us. We'll come back to you. You'll know in a day if we're lying, right? I don't have a lot of time to make it up, right? I got to do it. So yeah, anybody on this webinar wants to give us a form or give you guys a set of specifications, we'll be happy to take the challenge up.
You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen, supply chain geeks of all ages. Again, thank you, John Darlenzo, for your time this afternoon. And if anybody would like to take the DoForms challenge and see if John can convert or build an app in less than a day, please give me a call, send us a note. Thank you, John, again, for your time this afternoon.
Yep. And one more thing, you've got DataLogic joining next, and we've just recently certified on the DataLogic platform. So all of these great applications that we're talking about, can be built literally in minutes and deployed on the DataLogic platform. So,
Awesome.
very good. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, John. Thank you so much. Thank you, Zach. Well done, both of you. John, I like how you bridged GeoTab and DataLogic. That was very well done. So
I like to be that glue.
Yes, thanks for being the application glue. That's awesome.